Hey, welcome to this week's podcast. We have got this question so many times, so we really wanted to address it here this week. And that is it reasonable for us to expect our kids to eat absolutely everything?
So there's so much to this,
Yeah,
isn't there?
there is, yeah.
So the first thing is to acknowledge that we're all different and our kids are all different. Like you don't like cucumber?
Yeah, absolutely. God, spewcumber, we call it in our household. My daughter and I can't stand it.
Yeah. And I think that's okay. It's the important piece to remember as parents or caregivers is that we need to provide our kids with nourishing foods
Yeah.
and to provide a safe and calm place for them to eat. It's then up to our kids what and how much they choose to eat.
Yeah.
In saying this, I do think it's reasonable to expect them to try different foods without making a big deal about it. So just to have an expectation as a family that you try new foods. And after you've tried it, you can say, yeah, not for me right now. Never to the point of fighting about it or of bringing emotion to the table about it. So if that does happen, I think it's better to just let it go and to come back to it when you're both calm. I think a piece is to remind kids that their taste buds change all the time. So that even though they may not like it now, they might come back to liking it down the track.
Yeah, I always like something you've said before when we've been discussing this topic is that you've said to your kids, you know, they said, I won't eat avocado or I'm not going to try avocado. And you've said, oh, it's okay. I never used to like avocado when I was a kid, but now I'm growing up. And I love that analogy because what kid doesn't want to grow up
So
and
true.
be older? So it's kind of, you're not coercing them, but it is true though. It's founded on truth. There are things I would never have eaten as a child that I happily enjoy eating now. So
totally.
yeah.
Our tastes change and they mature.
They do. And that's, I suppose, the real advantage of never giving up offering things to kids because things are constantly changing. My son took years to actually enjoy eating salad and now it's one of his favourite foods. If I had just stopped giving him salad, like we continue to serve up salad every single night for years and years before he actually ate and willingly ate salad. You know, he'd occasionally try it. I'd always invite him to try it, which is something we're going to talk about soon. But you know, if I'd have given up, I would never have known. So that's the thing, I suppose, is just
and it would have limited him, right?
Absolutely,
like
100%.
Supporting them to try new foods is important for them to expand their palate, to increase the different nutrients they're getting, and also to encourage, I think, a mindset of giving things a try and an adventurous mindset. And I think an open mind that is willing to give something a go and is willing to try something is a real asset to anyone. And I get we're talking about food, but I think food and behaviour around food extend into behaviour around other life choices and decisions. Like I know for me, I want my kids to dive into life and to try different things and then make decisions after they've tried it. I don't want them to kind of be scared. And
for it to be a hard no about everything.
Before they've even had a crack at it. Like that's so limiting for them in their experience of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And even as adults now, you know, I know there are so many things that I've done just even in business that scare the hell out of me. But because I obviously have that ingrained from my childhood to have that kind of, well, let's just give it a go and wait and see what happens. If it's a disaster, then we won't go back there and do that same thing again. But like you said, to actually just give it a crack in the first place is a huge hurdle for a lot of people, children and adults.
And to challenge our kids to keep kind of trying new things.
And I mean, from a, you know, nutritional perspective, whenever I think about trying to encourage our kids to extend the amount of variety that they're willing to actually eat in their diet, you know, the more variety we have in our diet, this really extends the amount of nutrition that we derive from our diet, which reduces the risk of deficiency and of having important nutrients lacking in our bodies. And this is so important because we all need these macro and micronutrients. So macronutrients are protein, carbohydrates, fats. Micronutrients are your vitamins and minerals. We need these in our diet to be well and to thrive. To be able to think clearly, to hear what, for children, it's, being able to hear what we as parents are saying to them, to sit still, to be able to interact with others, for our kids to sleep well, and even for them to actually have a healthy appetite and a desire for whole foods depends on them not being nutrient deficient.
Yes.
So, variety and inviting them to extend the variety of foods that they're eating is so important. From that perspective as well.
This is what I've learnt so much from you, just how, like if someone is limited in something, it can just it can change so much of their behaviour, their capacity to learn.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
And if they're eating the same, 3 or 4 foods every day, I mean, there's definitely things that we all eat daily. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who have really restricted eating patterns, and the more variety, I love that saying, variety is the spice of life, 100% on every level, from as you said, nutritionally right through to the way we see our world and the way we live in our world.
Yes, totally. So just as you're talking, I'm thinking about kids I know that only have, say, white foods.
Yes.
And that we're not judging that, but that it is restrictive. And
100%.
It will impact their capacity on just across the board.
Yeah,
in
so
their
many
life.
levels. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
And I guess in talking about that, I want to talk about how important language is when we talk about
so important.
food. And then it's really powerful how you talk about food, how you talk about your kids' behaviour with food, and because that kind of can translate to how they feel about themselves, their own shame around their eating habits or what they will or won't eat. Because I think for a lot of kids that do have that really restricted diet, there was a reason it started. And actually they can get a real anxiety or lack of confidence around food. And then us as parents, because we get worried about them eating, it kind of reinforces that lack of confidence or that lack of adventurousness around food. So I really want to invite you as parents to be mindful of the way that you talk. And because language can be really empowering and supportive, or it can be really disempowering. So I wanted to talk about using invitational language with your kids. So invitational language is where we invite rather than command something. And it kind of gives our kids an out and a choice. And this is really important. Like I think of me, if I don't have an out for something, I'm skeptical and I'm hesitant. But if I've got an out, then I'm more curious. And our kids are the same. We want them to be curious and to kind of know that they can try something and they can opt out. We're not going to trap them in there or, kind of create more restriction or more shame around them trying it or not trying it.
And them not feeling coerced as well.
Totally. So hugely important. Kids have massive radars for that. And that can just lead into a whole other podcast we could do around our struggle.
Absolutely, which we will, definitely.
But some examples of invitational language. Would it be okay to try the zucchini with your carrot? And to then just let it go.
No emotion attached whatsoever.
Emotion.
It is literally, like you said, an invitation.
How about you try the cheese with the spinach? I reckon you'd love it. Remember you helped buy the sweet potato at the shops. How about tasting it? I've roasted it tonight instead of mashing it, so it's totally different to last time.
And things like even I know, I often also invite them to think about maybe what they've contributed to. So, if they've helped make a salad, say, you've helped make this salad. Is this something you'd like to try it now? And like you said, the invitation is like you're inviting them to a party. It's not I think sometimes.
You must come.
And I think sometimes as well, like you said before, that parents, and I know I've definitely done this, where I'm so invested in them eating that
Yes.
thing that I almost sound desperate when I invite them. Like it's a
Yes.
desperate invitation, and we
Yes.
definitely don't want any desperation or
Yes.
like coercion, like we said before.
I like that you said that. That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Kids have just a radar
Yeah.
for us and where we're at emotionally, and when we desperately need something from them,
Yes.
they can use that as a bit of a
like-
brokerage kind of,
it's like the radar that they know when you're on the phone having an important business
Yes,
discussion.
yes.
It's that same radar.
Yes, totally.
So what do we do if you have a child and they're just putting up a fight about any new food, and, you know, they have a limited diet of what they will eat? What will we do with a child like that you kind of can almost anticipate is going to reject your invitation straight away?
Yeah, totally. I think it's really important to have foods they currently enjoy, and then often new foods as well. I think it's really important to be considerate without catering to them. It's important to totally take any emotion or charge out of conversations around food, around mealtimes, around even their behaviour with food. This can be really difficult because, like I said, we get worried about our kids, and so we kind of, it's like our focus spirals right in, and we just drill down. And this isn't good. This can kind of lead to actually more problems. So, I mean, when kids have restricted, when they choose to eat less, there's often a reason behind it. So you can kind of go to your health professional to work out what that reason is if you need to. But these are lots of things you can do no matter what the reason is. And one is, like I said, to kind of not make food or anything around food emotional. And for you to try as best you can, and I know this is really easy to say, to not worry, to actually trust that they will expand their palate and they will start to, it's like almost you letting it go. So you focusing on something else. So you focusing on maybe what they're doing well, or focusing on something else, because it can just consume us.
Yeah.
And then that can feel like a pressure that comes down to the kid that can kind of create more anxiety for both you and them at mealtimes.
And here on the podcast, like, we're definitely always chipping away at all of the other things around the actual eating experience, like that time when you're sitting down at the table and eating, that support the development and an interest and a curiosity about food. And that in itself, I feel, takes a lot of the pressure out of when it just actually comes to sit down and eat.
True. Exactly. So, like we'll talk a lot about on the podcast is make food with them. Support them to get curious about food where there's a curiosity with no pressure. Like I said before, like it's an invitation. They don't have to. They can touch it. They can cut it up. They can take a tiny taste of it.
Talking about things like, you know, we often talk about guess the ingredient, which is definitely a firm favourite. Even with teenagers in our household, if I cook something new, everyone loves to guess what ingredients are in it. Talking about, like you said, family holidays and
just lightening it up. And believe it or not, as humans, we're mammals. So the way that we're wired is for connection, for conversations. And at the dinner table, we can really support our kids to come to develop more of this. It's called the ventral vagal part of your nervous system, this part of your nervous system which is best for your physiology, best for your health, and best for you to learn how to socially engage with other people. And so meal times can be all about that, social engagement, just talking about the food, about the previous holiday, about, things that feel good to talk about, which is really good for their nervous system to be able to then eat, like it actually relaxes the belly. so they can kind of have an appetite.
Yeah.
Kids are so wired to where we're at, and when we're worried about them, it can shift them to another part of their nervous system where they get anxious, or they that want to eat actually starts to shut down.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I know in our household we love talking about like past holidays or, things that, have happened in the past that we've all really enjoyed is a really common source of conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Such an important part of
Yeah.
dinner. Hey?
Yeah, absolutely. And every child is just so different. There will be different reasons why your child is not eating, and we'll be covering many of them over the course of this podcast. Some kids may have a deficiency, as I was mentioning before, in an essential vitamin or mineral like zinc would be one of them. So they have a limited appetite purely based on that kind of biological driver. For some kids it can be textural. They may have been sick or had surgery, which has just left that impression about like that negative association between that experience and food. I can remember as a child I got really, really sick with a heart condition, and before I developed that heart condition I actually vomited, and I'd eaten grapefruit before I vomited, so that's what I vomited up. And for years and years, I couldn't even smell grapefruit without just having this violent kind of just reaction.
Yes.
I'm fine with it now, thank goodness. I actually really enjoy it.
But how strong the association
100%.
is, hey?
It was decades of me not being able to, and the eating the grapefruit and me developing the heart disease had no correlation whatsoever.
Yeah.
But there was that strong association that I just couldn't get by. So, I mean, that's obviously a very common reason why a particular food might be off limits, and that's different though to picky eating. That's to that ongoing increasing amounts of foods that are being rejected.
I think things can start that way though.
Yes.
And that's where just not making anything a big deal, talking about food, enjoying different foods, you modelling healthy eating is all really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. But like we said, it's a complex, it's a concerning, no doubt, and, really multi-layered issue. And definitely if you suspect that your child has a medical reason for developing picky eating behaviours, then it is definitely worth consulting with a healthcare practitioner just for direction that's specific to your child. But look, if you and your child need extra support to navigate picky eating, we do have a program called Raising Well-Nourished Kids, and it is a fabulous 10-part program with 12 months access to all of the materials, core units, bonus units, plus monthly support from Jane and I. You get to actually ask us questions, which I think is where the real value is. And, our aim is just to help you to raise and support you to raise happy, healthy, whole food loving kids. So we'll pop a link about that anyway in the show notes. Yeah.
And as I said before, the most important thing is for you to come back to the enjoyment of food for yourself and to take any pressure off your kid around meal times, to trust that they'll get there. When we have issues like this, it can be hard to feel like it's ever going to change. So it's to remember that things change over time.
They definitely do.
And to have clear expectations and boundaries in place so that they know what you expect, that they will try things, that you communicate them well beforehand when they are well rested and well fed. Know that you'll need to repeat this often, your expectations.
Yeah.
And, invite your kid to try different foods and be confident in your kid and their capacity to do that, because kids are super perceptive and they'll pick up on whether they think that we think they can do it or not.
Yeah.
So if we're hesitant or doubtful that they'll try something, then they might believe us instead of having a go themselves.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks for joining us today. Yes. Hopefully you've got some value out of that, and at least some thought-provoking moments in there. Yes. Have a fabulous rest of the day. Bye.
See you.